So once again, Longpi, welcome to this interview and this session with us today. And as I mentioned, I'd love to ask you first to introduce yourself a little bit and say who you are, what you do in life, which is quite obvious nonetheless. And what should we know about you?
Well, my name is Mang Pasura, as you see on the screen. So I've been a monk for 17 years. I started becoming a monk at 28 years old, but I also have the chance to practice meditation ever since I was very young and ongoing until I became a monk. But after I became a monk, I also get the chance to conduct meditation retreat sessions and in many countries across the world. So it's more than 70 countries so far. So generally, my part would be to introduce and also explain about how meditation really works so that everybody can benefit from the practice of meditation regardless of their race, religious, or belief, because it's emphasized on how to develop the state of the mind for being conscious and more aware.
Wow, you've traveled so much more than I have. And this is what you do in life. That's amazing, honestly. Thank you. And actually, I had a question from our team members, which is very interesting. I'd love to know as well. Why did you decide to become a monk? Why are you on this path?
Well, before I was a monk, I used to be just like everybody, starting school, starting master degree. I had a few jobs. I was a flight attendant. I mean, the last job before I became a monk. And I used to have the philosophy of work hard, play hard, kind of person. So I started a workaholic, but I also, enjoy life to the extreme. So at the 28 years old, I started to kind of feel fed up, with how things are. So I wanted to take a little break just to sort of see myself in the new directions after turning 30. So that's why I decided to be a monk for 4 months, because in Thailand, there's a tradition for a man to be a monk for a short period of time, for a few weeks or a few months. So that's why I decided to become a monk for 4 months. So at first it was hard, of course. The life is not easy, but after time goes by, it's getting, kind of peaceful, that I really feel, grounded, I guess. And that's really give me a different perspective of how to see life and something that really called happiness. So that's why I decided to extend it until now it becomes 17 years.
17 years. Would you say it has become easier over time, or?
It is a lifestyle, you know what I mean? So even there are so many rules and restrictions, but once you get used to those disciplines and rules, it's become part of your life. That the moment it becomes part of your life, it's actually easy to just do it without feeling that you have to force yourself. At the end of the day, all the rules and disciplines that we have has main purpose, one main purpose, and that is to help us be mindful with our life, because everything that we have in the rules is basically about what kind of necessity that we should have, how we should look after them, what kind of behavior you should have, what are the manner we should conduct. So those kind of things really help us to be more mindful, and mindfulness also be in support of the practice of meditation. So generally, the discipline that we have actually in support of the practice of meditations. And if the goal is to get deeper in the meditative experiences, that would be an ideal.
And step by step, we're getting there, right? 17 years. And if you were to explain what a day in the life of a monk, well, in this case, of your life looks like, how would you explain it to people like us?
Generally, just like everybody, eat, sleep, but a lot more meditation, I guess. So the day will start about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning and follow with meditation until about like 7 o'clock, where we have breakfast about 7:30. In Thailand, sometimes we go out to ask for food in the bowl as well. And in my case, I will continue my meditation after breakfast from like 8:30 all the way to 11:30. That would be the lunchtime, also the last meal of the day. And then in the afternoon, that depends. Some days I have works to do, work for the temples. I will just, finish all different tasks that has been assigned to. And doing chores and all that. And then in the evening, about 7:30, that'll be the evening prayers and meditation. And we finish about like 10, 11, go to bed. So that would be one day.
And that's quite a typical day, right? Especially in the temple, isn't it? And
yeah.
And I know you do so many things besides that as well, though. I know you travel a lot, you speak a lot. I mean, we're here right now on this session together. What is more what are the extra things that you do as a monk, and why is it different for some monks?
Well, my temple is big, so we have a lot of tasks, a lot of projects, for a different group of people, from rural area to youth development to different things. So my part is in the international relations divisions, and also I was assigned to teach meditation in English. So it's kind of depends on the time differences around the world, and that's pretty much my job. And I also have a chance to help with many projects of trainings in different countries as well. So that's a lot on the package.
International relations, yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. Very, wow, beautiful work that you do, which of course I know, and now we're also sharing that with others. And another question actually received from our team is the question whether everyone can become a monk. And if so, what does that process look like? What does it depend on? What's needed? Yeah.
Basically, everybody can become a monk because each temple will have their own sort of kind of acceptance procedures. In case of my temple, there will be a short-term monkhood program open up. So everybody can apply for it. Of course, they have to go to some interviews and all that. And afterward, if you pass that short-term ordination and you want to continue further, there'll be longer program for you to continue your trainings for a few more years until you fully become a member. So generally, that's what it's like.
Is that the same for women or totally different?
The thing is that in Thailand, we don't have the female monk tradition. I mean, in the Buddha time, there are female monks tradition, but because in order to become a monk, you need a community of monks to adopt you into the community. So it's kind of lineage that pass on from the Buddha all the way to present day. So in case of Thailand, Buddhism, when it came to Thailand, the female monk lineage never came with it. So we sort of like never really started from the very beginning. But the lineage still exists in Korea and Taiwan. So they pass on down for like 2,600 years. So if you want to, you can also apply for that. But, they have different types of training and all that.
Okay, so I have to move to a different country, I understand.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Very interesting, really. Very, very interesting. And going back again to a day in the life of, what is it that you enjoy the most about what you do? And then I mean the whole package of what you do, because you do more than just a traditional, right? Traditional day. And what is it that you, let's say, like the least or is the most challenging for you, basically?
Well, for me, what I really enjoy is actually just sit down and meditate in my spot. That is actually an ideal activity of the day that I really like to do. But otherwise, of course, I enjoy, people think that I enjoy being a teacher, teaching meditation, but honestly, I don't become a monk to become a teacher. I became a monk to be a student. So it was like the other way around, you know what I mean? So I only share what I have experienced and what I have learned from many masters who are really great at what they have been practicing and passing down their wisdom and knowledge. So that's actually mainly my part. So the most challenging is that trying to be as close as what I have been talking about, because everything that I share, a lot of them come from the master who is really, really good. But I'm not as good as they are. So I want to be as good as they are. So that's a little bit challenging to keep developing myself to that extent.
And we always remain a student, don't we? We're never actually there, are we? At least in the belief system that you adhere to, it's like when you're there, that means you are enlightened, which means you're no longer here, isn't it?
Generally, that's the idea.
Yeah, interesting. And another question that came from our community actually is that when you have a problem, or let's say when you face a challenge, what do you do? How do you go about finding a solution for that?
Pause first.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time we love to react. React is like when you throw the balls against the wall, just bounce back right away. So the harder you throw it, the harder it bounces back. So that's its reaction. So it's tend to come with a lot of strength, a lot of emotions, a lot of energy is going right back at the problem. And that's not really solve. It's more like you just put point and arrow straight into the problems. So what I really do when things really get rough is just to sort of pause and step back a bit. So it's just instead of it's becoming a wall, it's like you have a perforated wall, something that's softer, really soften the impact. So then things that bounce back a lot softer. And that actually, when you're no longer part of the puzzle, you started to see things in different directions. So your thought become more logical. You start to see the answer in different ways. Things become more responsive rather than reactive. And that's for me really, really helpful when things get really, really rough. Sometimes some problem actually doesn't need to be solved much at all. You just like, yeah, what the heck, and just wait a bit more and things will resolve itself too. A lot of time we just want to take control of every little aspect and want everything to turn out the way we expect it to be. And that's tough. That's end up being overworked unnecessarily. Sometimes we make it even worse.
Yes, I can personally vouch for that. And I believe that's very true. Yeah, and I love the analogy that you shared about the wall and softening the wall. And I remember when I was studying with you in the temple, of course, all the analogies that you use and the metaphors to make all the teachings so much more practical and tangible. And I love that. It's so like to simplify it a little bit, because we're talking about concepts and theories sometimes, especially also in the teachings, right? And that way we kind of create the bridge between your knowledge and your world and our knowledge and our world, because on a day-to-day basis our lives are very different, right? And the way we experience life also can be very different, of course.
In the other words, people say a lot that if you want to have a better idea, you have to think outside of the box. But as long as you're in the box, you can't think outside of the box. So if you want to think outside of the box, you got to step out the box first. As long as you're part of that things in the box, you won't see anything else. You still see the frame in a way. So you have to step away and look it from the top. So, I'm not in the box now. I see all the players in the box.
Exactly. And it's also like sometimes we try and really convince someone else of our viewpoints, but we talk to them while they are still in their box as well. So it's the same principle, right? Take them by the hand to your box and show them what you're trying to show them. So you can see that connects. Nice. Again, nice analogy. Thank you. And another question from our community members was about the mind versus the body. And this person said that some people say that our minds are more tired than our bodies are. Would you agree, or how do you see this? And what do you say about this? Yeah.
I actually totally agree with that statement, because you use your mind. When you feel tired, you just sit down and rest. You just watch Netflix, YouTube, and you think you're taking rest, but your mind don't rest in those time at all. You're actually still using your mind. Not to mention that actually when you have a lot of stuff in your mind and you go to sleep, you actually have this crazy dream that make you feel even more exhausted, because your mind kept on working all night long, taking all of those thoughts into account, into working all night. So basically your mind don't learn to rest or to slow down at all. So that's make your mind even more tired. By our body, when we feel like exhausted, we just, okay, I'm just take a deep breath, kind of settle down a bit, take a shower, take a hot bath, will be a lot easier. But the mind, we forget it. The thing is that we don't see the mind. So it's easy for us to neglect taking care of our mind because we don't see it. We tend to forget we have it. The body is like kind of easy to feel, but the mind, the hard part of that is we don't see it, and it become a habit to have that kind of exhausted mind. When you have a lot of troubles and you just keep adding up without resolving them, it's kind of suppressing, like a pressing in a can. So it's kind of kept adding up until it become a habit. Some people think it is normal for us to be stressed out, to be depressed, to be just like unhappy. Why? Actually, it's not. We're supposed to be happy.
So would you say, I know that you have said that that's the natural state of the mind, to be calm, content, happy, peaceful, right?
Yeah, exactly. That is the natural state of mind when there's nothing involved or interrupting. It's just like when you're sitting still, you don't really do anything. You feel relaxed, you feel at ease. That should be the normal state of the mind. Whenever the mind gets tense, that means kind of work up. So there's kind of the mind jump around and catching stuff and grip on it without letting go. So that's what happened with the mind. But now it's like you're an octopus grabbing all these, tentacles and holding on and never let it go. So it's become tense the whole time.
Yeah. I see that a lot around me as well, and within me as well, of course. Yeah.
Whenever you meditate, the moment that you started to feel everything's kind of unwinding, you notice that your feeling inside is kind of loosening up, feel kind of hollow and, kind of broadened within yourself. That is actually the sign that your mind is already sort of like releasing the grip.
Mm.
But we can do it before consciously. But as days goes by, we have more responsibilities and duties. And even I let go of that one, there's still something else to grab on anyway. So you kind of need those kind of practice in order to tell the mind, hey, this is a time I just want to lay it down, let it go, so I can place them all up front, and then I can see whatever I need to work on later on.
Would you say that meditation is, for most people, the most powerful modality that can help with this? Or would you say meditation and other modalities, or does it depend on the type of person that you are? How do you see that?
I know the meditation sounds like kind of serious practice. I want us to think a little bit back in the days when there's not much technology. Every culture around the world had these kind of a silent moment to yourself. In every culture, in every civilization, you pray, you chant, you meditate, you have some silent moment before you go into bed. When you tuck your kid to go to bed, you read the nice story for the kids to sort of like focusing on something positive. That it should be the time that we have for ourselves. Basically, in the old days, that's what we got. But these days, we are bombarding ourselves with a lot of media, from the phones, from the tablets, televisions, until we don't really have that silent moment for us to reflect. And when we don't reflect on what happened with us, or what should we do in the future, or what am I studying right now at the moment, we can't let go. So we just keep adding it up. And it never got resolved, because we haven't reflect on what we have been putting out. And we think just put in the back of our mind, just like under the carpet, and just pretend it doesn't exist. Everything will be just fine. But it's not, because I know that it's right there in the back of my head. But whenever I'm down, whenever I'm vulnerable, that's when it comes back. And that's when it hurt me the most. So if you get that chance to have that silent moment to look inside, to make a little reflection, things that need to be let go, things just need to be resolved, things just need to be dealt with later on, we categorize them. Now I'm settled. I know where I stand. I know where I need to go next. And that makes life become more stable.
Yeah, stable and peaceful. Sounds very calm hearing you speak about this. And connected to that, actually, a question that also came up is whether becoming a monk has changed your worldview. And not just indeed how you do life, which is what you just mentioned, but also how you see life.
Honestly, it changed a lot. Because before I was a monk, I used to be just like you guys, work hard, play at everything. I'm on top of the world by having everything, have a chance to travel a lot, just, the whole 9 yards. But that was very weird that after a few weeks, I was a monk, when I had nothing at all. I felt totally carefree. No worry in my head. It was like, that's simple. Meanings that happiness doesn't depend on who I am or what I have, but more like how I think. So that's really changed the perspective that happiness, the meaning of happiness itself, or even what is the purpose of life itself, is really, really something that I have been looking at it differently. So what I really have noticed as a monk is that people around the world wants to be happy, wants to be good. Even the definition of happiness and good are different, but they are pursuing the same, let's say the same abstract object that they can't define it, and they're still looking for the definition of it. But a lot of time they forget that the definition of the happiness that they're looking for is just so close to them. It's always there. The moment they just stop saying, I want, they got it.
Replace it by I have, and you see it actually.
Yeah, it's just right there, always there. Just the moment that you stop, I stop wanting it. I got it. Yeah. But people just like kind of always looking further away until they don't look closer within themselves. That's all.
Yeah, I think this connects to what you said earlier about trying to hold on, the grip, the tension, and then when you let that go, it's actually just there.
Yeah, but this world is not easy. It's about validation by others. You're always looking for validation. When each time you post stuff on your Facebook or Instagram, it's always like how many people will comment and likes on your post, and you get gratification because of those kind of thing. And if you don't get it, you don't feel, good about yourself. And that is the way people these days be looking for validation from others. But in fact, it doesn't really matter because they don't live on your life. You live your life. You are the one who really feel happy. And that's the happiness that contains like It doesn't matter. Thing goes up, thing goes down. I'm just me.
Exactly. I think the way I see it, at least, that's the journey of being human, to release all of that and let go of all of that so we can go back to the core of what we are and who we are and how we are. Like you said, our core is happiness, contentment, peace. So
Yeah.
we're basically releasing it all to go back to that core of
Yeah.
being, basically, right?
Exactly. It's not about pursuing, it's about being.
Yes. Sorry. Filling in your words. Do you have other lessons, insights, realizations to share with us? This is so, wow. Is there anything else that we can pick your brain with?
From what I have seen in my master, I mean, everything they have said so far is taking things down to simplicity. The moment we understand need and want, and that is coming from understanding ourselves, we understand what I need and what we want. And from that, make life a lot easier. We just love to make our life complicated for no good reason. We don't even know why we do things the way we do things in each day, the way we get up until go to bed at night. Why am I doing this? Why do I want that? And if the moment we pause and ask the question, it's like, that's pretty sucks. So that's actually, for me, is the best thing, to have that awareness to ourselves in every single moment, to notice that this is what I want. This is actually what I need. And this is what necessities is about. And, why do I need to waste time, energy, emotions, feeling to things that don't really matter to me? People can speak crap about me. It doesn't change who I am, but why do I have to be affected so much by their words? So, those things actually is the way we adjusting ourselves. I don't mean being, in submissions or giving up or surrender to just let people abusing you, but it doesn't mean that I have to get upset and just retaliate. You know what I mean? I can resort with some other method that I take high value in it, rather than resorting to just retaliation. It's like people say crap about me, I just have to say something back. It doesn't mean I have to say it back all the time. Sometimes it's just a bunch of crazy people on the street. It don't really matter. Sometimes people say bad stuff, I just say it calmly in a more reasonable way, and I don't need to get upset by it too. So there are many ways to get around things. And for me, we can make life simpler, and simplicity bring happiness.
True. Very, very true. I think this is a learning process, isn't it? This is quite a journey, quite a path to take to get there. Sounds great. I would love to have it now, get it in my grip. But yeah, it's I see what you're saying, definitely. And it brings to mind another question that I was asked to ask you as well, regarding meditation and healing, which connects to what you just mentioned. How can we heal ourselves and others and the world as a whole through the practice of meditation? How do you see that?
The process of healing depends on many aspects, but because of meditation, it allows us to reflect on what's happening with us in the past. Sometimes people think mindfulness is about being in the present, but it also actually means being aware of what's happening with you in the moment. So you can be aware that you're looking at the past, you can be aware of you looking into the future as well. So that's actually the part of the mindfulness. And when you do so, it creates the next step, which is introspection or retrospection, which means you are able to kind of review the whole thing of what would happen. And then you started to make reason with it. This is actually a lesson to learn. This is something that I understand happened with me, accept it as my part, so I can move on from it. So all of this is related to the process of healing, because at the end of the day, we can't erase anything in our life. Even though I want to forget something, I won't. Human brain doesn't work that way. But we try to pretend that it doesn't hurt me anymore because I can forget about them. You can't. At the end of the day, you can't. You can only learn to live with it and understand that it's already happened. It's something that you are not victimize yourself anymore, and you can move on from that. And that is a process of healing that really come, including other things that you have been, traumatized with different experience in life. Those are things that we can reflect and study to accept as who we are. And that's when we can move on. Otherwise, we keep rejecting ourselves all the time. And everybody start doing that and started to to do so on themselves is actually help them to see others people in different perspective too. That everybody has this sad story of pain that they don't even know about, and that's sometimes become the behavior that people act in certain way. And when you feel that sense of understanding, that bring kindness and compassion towards your action that you have with people, and that make the whole world a lot easier.
True. Again, sounds great. On their way. And if you were to take this one step further even and speak about a traumatic experience, really, how do you see that trauma and meditation? Would you say that meditation can help, or should it come in the healing process a little bit later on?
It's actually come automatically. The moment you're meditating, your mind settle down, your memory that have been, suppressing will slowly kind of, unwinding. And it will pop up. Sometimes it pop up just the feelings. Sometimes it pop up like images. But it's for you to, it's like you open the rug, the carpet, and the dust that you was just like, no, that is there, and try to say it's not there. It's like, oh, right there. So you sort of notice that now this is the dust. Now I can just put them aside. Now I'm just gonna go to that corner or the dustbin that I no longer need to think about them anymore. Or at least you get to deal with it, rather than just every time you look at the carpet, it's under there, but you pretend it's not there and it's haunting you. So those are really, really really healing. But it takes time. It depends on how deep the scar. The deeper the scar, the longer it takes. But eventually, instead of you thinking about it and live in those experiences, it slowly transforms you to be living with those experiences. And that's the big change.
And basically reintegrating it, I would say, right?
Yeah. You stop judging yourself. You stop making yourself victimize yourself, from those experiences. Started to move on from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, like you said, it can take quite a while, but in the end, obviously it's worth it. I mean, that goes without saying, but also, finding the support of practices like meditation, or finding the support of meditation, and the support of course, also people around you. And all right, I'd like to go a little bit to another path and ask a few questions about Buddhism and what that means to you, etc. Because this was also a big interest of our team and our community to understand a bit more from a Buddhist, of course. I'm not just reading about it online, which is of course different. So firstly, I'd like to ask you, what is Buddhism to you? How would you explain it? What does it mean to you?
Well, the word Buddhism sounds religious, but to be honest, the Buddhism is not really basically religion in a way, because there's nothing compulsory about it. When we talk about things like karma, it's not like the Buddha said karma and said the law of karma. He didn't do nothing about it. He was just like, hey, this is the law of karma. It exists already. It's like if you eat, you're full. If you don't eat, you stay hungry. If you brush your teeth every day, you got good teeth. If you don't brush your teeth, it takes a couple of years, but your teeth will go bad, So it's not like the Buddha make your teeth go bad. So that's basically what law of karma really, really means. So the rest is more like, now, if you understand something is good for you, you do it. It becomes your good karma, and the consequences will come back for you. That's why in Buddhism is not really something compulsory, first of all. Secondly, it's more like a lifestyle, because the foundation of Buddhist practice lies on three things. Number one, abstain from all negative actions or evil actions. Number two, strive in doing good action or positive actions, which means don't do any bad stuff, keep doing good stuff. You get the benefits. Number three, keep purifying your mind. So that actually the Buddhist practice, that doesn't mean that you have to call yourself Buddhist to do it, because generally this is what human beings should be doing. And how to define good and bad? Anything that comes from your desire, your greed, your anger, your ego, your jealousy, bad. Anything that doesn't come from that, good. Anything that you don't want others to do to you, to treat you, don't treat others, because that's bad. The clearer your mind is, the more you become more empathetic with others people feeling. So, good and bad define from that. So the Buddha for us is just like a teacher who discovers something. He's not like a holy figure. So he's more like a teacher. So that's how I see Buddhism is more like a kind of a lifestyle or a kind of philosophy that if you think is benefit you, do it. Because at the end of the day, everything that you behave, the consequences is on you and people around you.
Yeah. And speaking of karma, consequences, lifestyle, meditation, what about enlightenment in the sense of what does it mean to be enlightened and how can one reach that?
Well, in the Buddhist perspective, it's a bit deeper than the word enlightenment that used in the West. So generally, let's give a kind of simple analogies, like thinking of the mind, like a clear water. And in this mind, because everything is clear, is also contain knowledge that we have, the knowledge about who we are, where we are from, where we should be going, all the purpose of life. We had the answer, but it was clouded by the ink that we have been putting down there for many of the lifetimes that we believe in. So, many colors of ink started to mixing up until we can't see what's inside and we can't really see reality as it is. Enlightenment is a process that we are able to filter everything completely until everything returns to the pure state permanently. And that's when we obtain knowledge. That's why enlightenment means to know, to awake from our own ignorance.
Again, thank you so much for making it so practical. You're saying, okay, Buddhism is actually a lifestyle, not a religion, which is quite a common misconception, I believe, as well. And again, about enlightenment, really making it more tangible for others to understand, for us to understand. Very much appreciate that. I love your analogies as always. I've said that before. And also speaking of, because you were talking about the ink in the glass, imagine you shake the glass, then it starts to clutter. This brings me to the topic of the viruses of the mind. I know you prepared teachings about that before, and I went through your teachings. And we'd love to ask you a bit more in-depth questions regarding, for example, to start, what you believe the biggest causes of negative self-beliefs. Where do you believe it comes from, that negativity?
It's just like when you were born. There's already a lot of bacteria in your stomach. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of fungus bacteria on your skin. If you put into the microscope, you can see them. So it's always been something that we accumulate over lifetime, and it's there waiting for when we are weak. Whenever we are weak, it means when our immune system is low, it shows effect. It makes us sick. Same as our mind. It has this for a long time, throughout lifetime, we keep adding up. And each time we let our mind wander, every time we let our mind being affected by people, situations, circumstances, until our anger, our frustration, our jealousy, ego just kind of stir up, we're adding up more. And the more that we make it stir up, the more we catch on them, we're adding up more. So that's until we accumulate and we carry it to the next life. That's the thing.
And that's the karma you were talking about earlier, right?
Well, because of that, whenever our mind is negative, let's say if the water is blue, everything I see will be blue, right? Which means I perceive the world in blue color instead of seeing the world according to its reality. So basically, if the blue color is anger, that means I will see the world based on my anger. So my thought, my words and action will be based on my anger, which is going to be a bit more violent, more hurtful, more spiteful. And then, of course, it will create a negative effect on me. When I say something bad to a person, they don't like me, they will say something back at me. Then what? It stirs up my mind even more. Then it generates more negative activity. So it's kind of vicious cycle, they keep running on and on and on. Yeah. So that's why we focus on going back to the source. How can we actually keep our mind steady, become more aware, so that we can just keep those ink intact. And then when that ink is intact, at least it's kind of cleared out, I can have clearer thought. And that leads to what? Better words and better action, which means it leads to more positive consequences. So I kind of reverse the cycle with that.
So you're basically saying it doesn't matter as much where it comes from, because you say we're actually born with it. It matters more what you do with it. Right?
Exactly. So, doesn't matter, because it's like you try to complain that you have fungus on your body.
Yeah, and try and get it off.
And then, whose fault is it to put it on my body? It doesn't help you if you know who put it there, but it matters how you know the way to kill it.
So how should we deal with it? Mind-wise, of course.
Technically, each time you're meditating, those ink get filtered out. So we call it purification process. Actually get filtered out each time you're meditating. But the problem is that the moment you open your eyes after meditation, the mind tends to goes out and capture more. So that leads to the next part, which is the lifestyle I was talking about, because the lifestyle of discipline helps you to keep your mind become more mindful, becoming more aware, at least make it less distracted. So which means, let's say you have 100% of ink, and you filter out, let's say 5%. So when you go on the day, that 5% is already added up back. But if you become more mindful, you probably add back like 2. So when you meditate again, you reduce another 5, and then you add more 2. So it's kind of, reducing over time. But if we don't do this kind of, become more mindful with our daily life, become a bit more disciplined with the way I behave, that will keep adding up, just like before, or even more. So
if you keep meditating, eventually you'll win.
Generally, that actually what it is. And of course, it's going back to the way your lifestyle is. That's why meditation is one part. It helps you to get kind of deeper, to become more aware. But then if you carry that awareness outside, it means that you look at people, you started to become more mindful about yourself. When your attention is with you, then you see others with kind of more calm, peaceful feelings. And then you interact with them with peace, with kindness, with compassion. And that leads to, not adding more ink and actually clearing out the ink at those actions.
I see, yeah. And that's about the ink, like the negativity, the negative self-beliefs, etc. What about negative habits, like bad habits, impulse, all those things? How should we deal with those? Is it a similar process? Is it different?
Similar, but a bit more action-oriented, because all habits come from repetitive actions. Everything that we say, do, think repeatedly become a habit. And the moment it becomes a habit, it's kind of automatic program that we already install. So the moment it is triggered by the stimuli, is activated. So the way you just like, when you see someone that you don't like, you just get irritated automatically. Even that person doesn't do anything, just sitting right there, breathing is enough to make you irritated, which doesn't make sense at all, right? And that's because that is the habit of the mind that we have already developed. So which means I have to consciously change the cause of the action when I have been in contact with that trigger. And if I keep changing that direction repeatedly, it will create a new part of the habits or new part of the program that will be activated the moment I see the triggers. So that will change. Actually, there's a sign behind that. Habit is basically is created by 2 neurons in our brain. So whenever this neuron is triggered, it will connect to another neurons for action. So it become a part. And the more often you are triggered, the more often you will create the part and the part become more liquidated. And this, the moment that we created in our brain, is there for a lifetime. It doesn't get erased. That's the thing, it don't get erased. So you can never erase your old habit. You can only create a new part. And you can just need to make this new part become more liquidated than for the first one, until automatically the neuron signal will jump to this one instead of this one.
That is very interesting, because I have been hearing that you can weaken that path, but now you're basically saying you have to replace it instead, so that it still weakens, but more because another one becomes stronger than it is. What
exactly.
Yeah. Interesting.
There's actually research with the people with the AA, the Alcoholic Associations, that even people who can be sober for like 10 years, but when they hit a really big bump until they can't solve it, it goes back to drinking, because that old part is still there.
So basically means we have to be really careful with which bad habits or negative habits we fall into, because they may bite you in the ass.
Exactly. They can come back anytime, especially when the trigger is very strong. But it doesn't go away. But it means that if we become more mindful about what's going on, we can always stick to the new path.
Interesting. I have another question for you related to that, which is why you think that people these days mostly seek quick fixes to improve, get better, get rid of things. Why is that?
Well, generally, humans love to have the quick fix because it's easy, though. But what my master will explain will be that now we live in the world of everything industrialized. So it's not like in the old days where, when you live in agricultural society and you don't have much facilities. You have to you learn to wait. You learn to wait for the season to come, for the rain to fall, for the crops to grow, so you cannot make things faster. But these days, we tend to rely so much on everything around us until we want the outcome to happen immediately, and life's getting more comfortable, and it create a new habit as well. Remember when I was kid, I still using the phone with the dial. So I learned to be patient with that. But now it's like when I see the text, like have a little circle running, it would get frustrated already. It's like because all these technology around us make us into that habit of wanting the result immediately. So that means we just have to reverse the habit in order to learn to wait, because everything in life doesn't really go like that spontaneously. Just there are things that have to plant the seed and wait for it to grow.
Very interesting. I think, yeah, it makes a lot of sense in terms of everything around us is speeding up. So we are trying to speed up as well, including when it comes to wellness and introspection, reflection.
Yeah, and that's tough because people confuse information, knowledge, skills, and wisdom. They are not the same. People tend to believe that information they search on the internet is everything. But as long as it doesn't transfer into who you are, it will never become your wisdom. If you cannot practice it, it will never be your skill. So information is something that anyone can get, but wisdom and skills are individual.
Wisdom and skills. Yeah. How do you transform knowledge into wisdom?
That will be when you know something, then you have to put into your practice until you learn the craft of it. Just put in simple perspective. You can, these days, if you want to cook, you can just go to YouTube. There are a bunch of recipes, but it doesn't guarantee that your dish will taste good. How can you tell that my pinch of salt is the same as your pinch of salt? You just have to learn to get there more often with your hands, because skills come from knowledge plus practice.
Beautiful, Nongpi. And I think, first of all, so many questions I've already asked you, so many things you've already explained. So thank you for that, first of all. And I'm looking forward, honestly, to have you back on here, because I'm sure many, many other questions will pop up from those who love to hear how you see life, how you see meditation, how you see wellness, and really, because the way many people, and I'm also speaking from my own perspective, the way many people see you and someone like you is as an expert, right? Even though I know that's not how you necessarily speak about yourself, I'm very well aware, but it's almost like you have teachings to share that are very valuable for us, especially the types of life that we live these days, right? The fast-paced life, and we're trying to slow down. So you investing time and supporting answering these questions is super valuable for us to live life better and improve the way we live life, because in the end that's what it's about, right? And the introspection, the reflection, the healing, even everything that comes with it. So
do you know when a monk becoming a monk, what do we pledge to our teachers or preceptor?
No?
We pledge that from now on, I pledge to learn from your habit. Learn from what they taught, from their habit. So I ended up with a master who couldn't read a word, but have this perfect behavior so that I can learn how to be a proper monk, a proper person based on the way a person is behaving. My temple was founded by a nun who couldn't read and write because she never been to school. When she founded the temple, she has only about $100 to turn an empty paddy field into a temple. She had 10 disciples starting the project with her, and she was 60 years old. So against our odds, she didn't have the age, she didn't have the knowledge, she didn't have the funding, she didn't have the manpower. So she turned that empty piece of land into a temple of 3,000 monks and 100 centers worldwide. Without a single knowledge, she couldn't even write her own name.
Wow. I did not know, actually. I don't think we talked about that before. That's incredible. And that's such a mind-blowing story to end this with as well. So thank you for
But what she was really good at is meditation. She was really good at meditation, and that's make her mind so sharp and clear, and her insight. Even when I ask, and when we ask her the question, is very difficult from the text that even the Buddhist scholar feel very hard to explain. She just explained in simple words, and she couldn't read them. Then that's what I see, and things that she said to us like very simple. Okay, keep doing good. Keep meditating. Keep things clean and tidy.
Well, if any of us needed any more motivation to start or continue meditating, I think we've got it. So honestly, thank you so much for all of that knowledge and wisdom that you shared with us. Super, super appreciate it. And I would like to also open the floor now to the others on this call who may have some follow-up questions or some personal questions they'd love to ask you, if that's okay.
Sure.
So perhaps whomever has a question, maybe raise your virtual hand just so we don't speak over one another. But feel free to ask any questions that you have left to ask. Who would like to start? Yes, Borer, go ahead.
Hello, greetings. Thank you for inviting us. And I'm really grateful to have you and to listen from someone. I already wanted to talk or see someone who has already been practicing meditation for a longer period of time than me. I started learning about this thing almost 13 years ago. And as you said that it was just like a culture in your country that everybody can be in this space, but in my culture it's not. So I have experienced a lot of difficulties or hindrances or hurdles, like these kind of things. So my question would be around this, and a little bit you can say uh, complex about that. For someone who want to meditate, and for some reason like religion or something like that, they are not allowed to perform meditation.
Mhm.
So how that person can perform meditation? And I am asking because we are being trained by Lauren for meditation, and we will train others or provoke others to at least start meditation or and reap the benefits of that. So is there any kind of alternate method like walking meditation? I have heard about that, or anything like that that people can or even children can start with.
That's a very good question. But first of all, let's go back to the meaning of the word meditation itself. Meditation is a skill that enhances the ability to stay conscious and be aware of the moment, basically. So now the problem is that people have the preconception idea that meditation equals religious practice. So that's why it kind of got, those kind of feedback that you were talking about. So let me go back to in times like around 60 in the US. Back then, people were still worry about meditations as a religious practice. So they wouldn't call it a meditation, they call attention enhancing techniques. So my point would be that chicken is English word. In Thai, we call gai. In Chinese, it's called jiro. It doesn't matter what you call it. It is that thing, that poultry meat that you eat anyway is good when you fry it, that's all. So what matters now that if you just say, I'm going to teach you, we're going to practice meditation together, it will be troublesome. But the point will be you can turn it around with other words. This is today we're going to do a little workshop about enhancing our focus, for example. You don't even have to call it because it's just a name, and you can just create a name for it in different way that doesn't refer to the old connotation. Because at the end of the day, if you ask someone to focus on their breathing, to visualize something bright within themselves, repeating the word that they come up with, there's nothing religious about it at all. So whether you're going to be choosing walking, meditation, sitting down meditation, it doesn't really matter as long as you don't call it. People don't get that weird idea of it. You just have to explain. This is a workshop for enhancing de-stress, workshop for enhancing attention, awareness, consciousness, healing process. There are many ways that you can just call it. For kids, I was just teaching kids meditation in Austria last week, and what I did was just like simple. Okay, kids, I want you to sit down. Imagine that you're sitting in the nighttime, okay? Now I want you to pick a star, the brightest one in the sky. Just pick it. You got it? And then I'll eat it like a candy. Now let's play a game. The game is very simple. The game is called Guardian. So I want you to keep looking at the star inside yourself, okay? As long as you can see it, you can guard it. If you lose sight of it, something will take it away. Don't let the monster take it away, okay? Now let's look at it from the top. Now turn the star into a moon. Now let's turn the star into a sun. Now imagine you're flying. That's it.
Gamification, I love it.
Thank you for the answer. Yes.
Thank you, Borer. I think it's a very important question to ask indeed, yeah. Because I know you're not alone in having that question, really.
It's more like the name that people got caught up with instead of what it is, because they're just hearing things without getting the experience. And this is not about religions, and it doesn't matter if you any religions. Meditation doesn't change what you believe in. It actually helps you to understand what you believe in a lot better.
True. So to go back to the core of what meditation actually is, without calling a meditation, so that people are open, right? Open to the practice, the modality. Thank you, Borer. Thank you. I see Isa. I'll bring you on the virtual stage. There you go.
Hi. Firstly, thank you very much for spending this time with us. It's awesome. I've made a lot of notes, and that's a lot of knowledge, but I'm going to do something with it later. I think you already partly answered the question I had, but I'll ask it anyway, because maybe you have some more wisdom. My question was really about our emotional regulation. So like when you're overly avoiding a particular emotional state, or overly focusing on a particular emotional state, or you're in it rather than observing it, you can be quite dysregulated. And I think a lot of what you said already answered some of this with the filtering process and acceptance, but I wondered if you had any more wisdom to that. And I wondered if you had any posture tips, which is a slightly less important question maybe, but I would like to sit for longer. And I've tried all kinds of positions and my legs are always dead. So, yeah.
Good question. So 2 questions. The first one, we usually let emotions consume us and become victim of our own emotions. And then there's actually not focusing on emotion. We actually become sort of a victim of our own emotions. So every emotions need to flow, because that's essentially the word is in motion, which means it is movement. So as long as you're still part of that movement, you are still being consumed by the emotion. So which means in that movement, you have to be still. Whenever you are still, that movement slowly turns until it ran out, until it no longer has that effect with you. But the moment you are part of that movement, of that motion, it continues to accelerate, because you are the fuel. You are the gas. Okay. So first thing first, whenever you notice that you started to being consumed by emotion, you notice the state of peace changed. Take a break. Take a mental break. Take a step back, because that stillness will help you to notice, now I see what emotion. And it's not about trying to regulate it, because the moment you try to control it is the moment that you actually input more accelerator into the emotion itself. So instead, you watch it flow until you understand what is happening with the situation. And then when you resume into the action, now the action itself will not be a part of that emotions. But if you try to regulate the emotion, you're going to jump right back in and stir it up again. Imagine like this, I'm upset. I know that I'm upset. And then try to regulate myself not upset by focusing on what I'm upsetting about. But human mind doesn't work that way, because whatever we focus on will get bigger. So if I focus on what makes me upset, I get more upset, not less upset. So my point would be, now take a step back. Okay, I'm getting upset. What is happening with me at the moment? Okay, this is a problem at my job, and there are some people who just acting like they don't understand what I'm talking about. Okay, maybe it should be because the way I explain it doesn't make sense to them. Let me lay out differently. Let's see if it works out. So you see that if I turn that into different action, I step out of that motions. And when I step out of that motions, it creates more resolute result. So that's the first one. So the second one about the sitting posture. First of all, don't get caught up with this perfect ideal posture that we have seen, because it's more about your body. Meditation is about finding that balance between awareness and comfort. Too much awareness, it will be tense. Too much comfort, it will be sleeping. So the most of the time, people tend to kind of get lost into wanting to focus on keeping the mind still. But you can't force your mind to stop thinking. That's the deal. You can only slow it down by sit back, wait, watch it until it slow down on its own, which means you need to sit the longest you can. And that requires you to sit as comfortable as you can while remain aware. So it doesn't matter if you sit on the chair, on your couch, on your bed, on the floor, legs down, legs up, point forward, up to you. As long as you can sit there and feel like, I don't have to worry about my body anymore. That's the first part. Secondly, accept that our body has limitation. It doesn't require you to meditate by sitting still completely for 3 hours straight up, because even I move. Human body has limitation, and that is we can't be in the same position for too long. Human tissue will not be able to stand the pressure. So at a certain point, you will notice it. But there's one thing about it. Have you ever enjoyed reading books or watching movie that was so fun that you can just kind of stay with it for a few hours without noticing, right? The moment our eye capture on something, it tends to withdraw from perceiving the physical sensation. So same thing with the mind, with the meditation. If you really enjoy that kind of time of meditating until you don't really pay attention so much on the body, that's when you actually meditate longer. It's not that you erase the pain. You don't perceive the pain. So the drill is that just ignore it. Tell yourself, if I feel pain, I will adjust, will start again. Come back to where I sit back, relax, and enjoy the meditation. Put it this way. When you go to cinema, what is your job? What is your task in the cinema? To watch the movie. So you find the best seat, so you can sit back, relax, and watch the movie, right? Are you an actress? No. Are you a director? No. Are you a commentator? No. So shut up and watch the movie. While you remain, sit back, relax, and watch it. Anytime you feel that your seat becoming uncomfortable, you shift, you watch it again. Anytime you got wandering thought, it's like you jump to the screen, become an actress, return to your seat where you can sit back, relax, and watch it.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Got a few more great analogies. Well done. And thank you for asking your questions. Questions, actually, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see Avian as well. Let me bring you on. There you go. Yes.
Hey, okay. So a reoccurring topic that I noticed between you and Lauren, and also in the slide that you made about the viruses of the mind, was introspection. What I wanted to ask was, because some people realize that introspection is beneficial for them, but they still tend to avoid it or are afraid to go deeper within themselves. So I wanted to ask, why do you believe, or why do you think that people might be afraid of introspection, or why do people avoid it?
A number of things, though. What I see, number one, would be, like I said before, that people look for validation from others. So throughout a lifetime of that means the person always feeling insecure to embrace themselves and accept how vulnerable they are, how much flaw they have. Because eventually, actually, everybody has flaw, but it's not everybody who can accept that they has a flaw to move on from that. And because of that, a lot of people are afraid to accept who they are. And that's why everybody create this image, that's illusion, that look like me. And everybody think of this image as me and try to protect the image so hard instead of accepting who they are. And that make introspection and realizing themselves, in the other words, very, very hard, because they don't want to embrace who they are and how, that life is not like this picture perfect they were creating. Secondly, my master said there are two kinds of people in the world. Don't know that they don't know, and know that they don't know. The first one is, they don't know that they don't know anything, so they don't know that they don't even know themselves. So that's why they never care to look inside themselves, to introspecting at all. They think they know what it is about themselves already. So that's actually what makes it really, really hard. Us are the people who know that I don't know anything about myself. So I want to know more about it. And that is actually a second stage. And that's why to open it up, it takes a lot of more moments for them to look inside until they started to see a glimpse of it. Because the moment they see within is not as scary as they believe it would be. It's actually become more accustomed to it, friendlier, rather than being hostile to that. And then started to accept it. Because in order to solve the problem, we have to admit the problem, accept the problem, and realize that we have it in order to resolve them. But if we kept rejecting it, we never really face it. So we always on the flight mode, running away.
Yeah,
Always
it's
on the
very
flight
important to acknowledge an issue before you can learn to accept them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
Did you have another question, Evian? Or
Wait.
do you have another personal question perhaps as well? Feel free.
Yeah, I actually do have one
Hmm?
other personal
If
question.
this gives you long because I see we're a bit over time. I don't know if
Sure.
There's one last question. What do you believe consciousness is? If you have an answer for that.
In our context, the consciousness is the mind, and the mind is not the body. It's not the brain. It's not the heart, because the mind is different. For us, we explain this different element that has ability to think, memorize, perceive, and to know. So when you are conscious of something, because the mind perceive and go through every thinking process until becoming realization of something. So that is the consciousness. It needs to work with the body because the brain is like an office for the mind. So it has a kind of like a software and hardware. The mind or the consciousness is the software, and the brain is the hardware. So kind of connect to each other, but not exactly the same thing. That's how we explain it. The key point is we can always upgrade the software, which is the consciousness of the mind, but the hardware tend to stuck the way it is ever since we grew up. So it's not easy to kind of upgrade the hardware. So we can always focusing on upgrading the software with the hope that it will stimulate or enhancing or optimizing the hardware.
Okay. Well, that was the last question that I had, but thank you for the answers.
Thank you, Evian. Thank you. And is there anyone else? Rose, you haven't asked anything yet. I don't know if you have a question. No? Gizra, do you? I don't see on the camera, but
No, I don't have any other question.
all right. And Boyer Isa, anything else that came to your minds?
I think I could talk to this lovely man for
Yes.
weeks and not get
Did
bored.
say
But
hours, but it's weeks.
I have enough to make a big difference to my practice already. So I'm gonna say thank you again and stop.
And also, thank you, Isa. And yes, she said weeks, not hours. And I know how you feel. I spent weeks with Longpi, and still, I still reach out every time with new questions and things that come up. Longpi, thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom, all your teachings with us. Very much appreciated. And yeah, thank you is all I can say, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And until next time, I'm already looking forward.
Okay, next time, all the best to you, and keep practicing until you turn all the knowledge into your skills and wisdom.
It's all about the habit, which is what we learned tonight. Thank you, Longpi. Sadhu.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.